Over to chairperson to introduce speakers. Yes, you can do it, please.
Yes. Congratulations, Dr. Kamal, and thanks for inviting me to a wonderful CardioCon conference. And a very interesting case is going to be represented by very eminent Dr. Vitisha. Is a senior consultant in interventional cardiology at Mumbai and trained in Germany for interventional cardiology and more than 30 years of clinical experience and have many more publications. So without taking much time, over to you, sir, for your presentation. Dr. Vitisha.
Sir, there is technical issue for Dr. Vitisha. Can we move on for another doctor?
Dr. Rajiv Agrawal?
Dr. Rajiv Agrawal, sir, is there.
Okay.
I am ready.
Okay. We'll go with Dr. Rajiv Agrawal.
Yes.
Dr. Tushar, can you introduce him, sir? Dr. Rajiv Agrawal.
I think I'll utilize that time.
You are mute. Dr. Tushar, you are mute. Kindly unmute yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. Dr. Rajiv Agrawal is the chair at the Department of Cardiology at Jaswant Specialty Hospital at Meerut. He works equally in preventive and invasive cardiology, and he also has deep interest in vascular biology, especially in diabetics. And he awarded with Amar Ujala National Excellence Awards for Lifetime Achievement. Also, he has awarded in 2017 by IMA Meerut, given by Mr. Siddharthnath Singh, member of health in UP, and he's having Inspiring Doctors of India 2018 by Economic Times on Doctors Day at Hyatt Regency, New Delhi. And he's having Literacy Excellence Honor 2018 by Bharat Nimam. And also received Health Icons by Times of India and Charan Laboratories. So welcome Rajiv Agrawal, sir. Sir, you can start up.
You are seen, sir. Please go ahead. Agrawal, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Kamal, for giving me this opportunity. I think by nature, Agitamib comes first, so I am coming first before PCSK9. And I'll just pass on why this is very important to discuss this kind of lipidology, because I feel lipidology is the most needed science for intervention cardiologist, because we see the recurrence of events. And look, this is a paper published in JACC. Even in America, only 50% of the patient population following intervention achieve LDL less than 70. So you know that as the LDL level increases, the event increases. So there is a lot of gap between lipidology and intervention cardiology. I always keep repeating, the lipidology is most important science to intervention cardiology. This is last week publication in ESC. 1 month of aggressive lipid lowering, you can see the decrease in lipid core in an atheroma. So don't be mistaken that the lipidology is chronic therapy. It works in acute settings also. Another thing which I want to talk about in reference to case is the acute coronary syndrome is a very heterogeneous population. This is not homogeneous. And there are variety of patients who are very, very high risk within acute coronary syndrome. This patient is very interesting to me, but very difficult patient. His younger brother had MI. His LDL on 2 milligram continues to be 120. He is diabetes, and he himself is 35-year-old. So he is a very, very high risk vascular disease patient. And I'll tell you what we can do for him. The core issue is, even today, in these 4 countries, 30% of the cardiologists or physicians do not know what are the targets in different situations. Unlike blood pressure, unlike sugar, where the targets are more or less fixed, despite the different background of the patient, this doesn't happen in lipidology. What has happened in 2019, the targets had been still lower, that if you are a very high risk vascular disease patient, your target is 1.4, roughly around 1.4, roughly around 50. If you have recurrence of event, then roughly around 1, which is 40 milligram, and Indian guidelines we say it is 30, and all these targets are less. So if your patient achieve less than 40 means 30, you don't step down the drug, you hold it. That is another trick. And this is our publication in Journal of Clinical Lipidology, which is a annual journal from National Lipid Association. We talked about target of 30 in acute coronary syndrome who are high risk patients. I have to talk about improve it ezetimibe based on simvastatin. What is important to know is improve it falls on the same graph of CTT what other statin fall, justifying that LDL whatever way you achieve is same. There is no difference if you achieve LDL with statins, with ezetimibe, with PCSK9, with bempedoic acid, or for bariatric surgery. LDL is LDL, unlike HDL. And as we had been talking about vascular risk, if the patient has stroke or TIA, the gains are different. If the patient has got CAD, PAD, and the gains are different. And if you have polyvascular disease, then the reduction in the risk is more. Not only first event is reduced, multiple events are reduced. So this is a very good drug when combined with ezetimibe. This is a recent publication which shows that high-risk patients have reduced event rate, and absolute risk reduction is to the tune of 6.3%. So my patient is very, very good candidate for ezetimibe. If you have polyvascular disease with diabetes, Dr. Kamal added last minute diabetes. I'll say there is no trial in cardiology which shows 9% absolute risk reduction in patients who have polyvascular disease with diabetes. Although our patient doesn't have polyvascular disease, but diabetes he has. This is once again a recent publication with modest dose statin like pitavastatin, and you see the ezetimibe combination reduces LDL quite a bit. And this is the event reduction with pitavastatin ezetimibe after 1 year. And how the guidelines can be utilized. They can be optimally used. So when you use high dose intensity statin with ezetimibe, you roughly achieve 60% reduction. And the trick is, if your 60% reduction fall into the category of 40 or 30, you are good enough. You don't need PCSK9. But some patient, I'll say half of these patients will definitely add on therapy, PCSK9 or bempedoic acid. So the reduction in LDL is based on background statin therapy because ezetimibe is combined. How the guidelines take it? So statin first, maximally tolerated doses of statin, then ezetimibe. If you are not still able to achieve your target of 1.4, that is 40, or Indian guideline based 30, then you have to come to PCSK9 or bempedoic acid. If you use a statin, and ezetimibe, it is class 2A. If you use statin, ezetimibe, and then PCSK9, then it is class 1 indication for PCSK9. If you use statin and directly PCSK9, then it becomes a weaker indication, 2A9. So guideline mandates that every patient of PCSK9 should have statin and ezetimibe on board. This is just yesterday publication from International Lipid Expert Association. This is not a guideline directed, but justifying the same thing, that maximally tolerated statin therapy, ezetimibe, and then come on to PCSK9 if you're not achieving the target. This is famous Da Vinci study by Dr. Kosikre, and he shows that even combining high dose ezetimibe, high dose statin, ezetimibe, and PCSK9, there are still a patient population which will not achieve those targets. So I'll say some of our patients will achieve this target. If you don't achieve, then only PCSK9 should come. PCSK9 should not come on board without ezetimibe. That is how I place ezetimibe on board. So there are many, many therapies, and you have to create a cocktail
The time is
of
over.
these therapies to achieve the LDL level. So I'll say 2019 goals are very difficult. Some say roughly about 50% patient will achieve goal with statin ezetimibe, and rest of them will need PCSK9 also. So just, this is my last slide. Let us not be artery cleaners. We should be healers and should pay enough attention to lipid modification in acute coronary syndrome. Thank you.
With that, I would like to request Dr. Raghu Satyanarayan to kindly introduce our common friend, Dr. Urmil Shah.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Kamal Sharma for giving me this opportunity to moderate. And Dr. Urmil Shah is a doctor from SIMS Hospital, interventional cardiologist and director there, over 20 years of experience. Is a good friend of mine also. Special interest in primary angioplasty, done more than 20,000 angiographies and more than 5,000 plasties, more than 200 national international publications to his credit. Awarded fellowship by Cleveland Clinic Foundation, Ohio, as international scholar in interventional cardiology department 2003 and 4. Chairman Cardiac Awareness Program, Rotary District 3054. Over to Dr. Urmil Shah, sir, for your presentation.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Yeah.
It's nice to be with all of you today morning. Now, what I'm going to talk is the case which has been given to me. Can you see my slides?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, it's a 45-year-old gentleman. It's a coronary disease. So what we are talking right now is a secondary prevention. Patient is having diabetes, strong family history. Brother is having coronary disease. Angioplasty has been done. Baseline LDL is high. His triglyceride also is high. Okay. So now the patient is already on rosuvastatin 20 milligram and hydrostatin patient already is taking. Now, is this lipid level a risk factor for the future cardiac event? That first and foremost we could decide. Can we prevent the future cardiac event in addition to lifestyle management? Something else can be done or not, and which is the best way to do? That is, I'm going to discuss. Now, when we are discussing the cardiovascular risk, once LDL is nicely controlled, the residual risk by and large is because of the triglyceride, HDL, and so many other things. So that also we have to take care, and that is important thing which I'm going to highlight. Whenever there is hypertriglyceridemia, first and foremost, we have to rule out this thing. Okay. So obesity, uncontrolled diabetes, hypothyroidism, nephrotic syndrome, all things are to be ruled out. If they are there, primarily we have to take care of that, and then we have to think of a triglyceride itself. Now, I presume that in patient, all the secondary factors have been taken care. So definitely what we are discussing right now is a familial combined hyperlipidemia, because the patient is already having LDL high and triglyceride also is high. So this family history is strongly positive. Now, in this subset of patient, what we call as a mixed dyslipidemia, we can give a statin therapy, we can give omega-3, we can give fenofibrate, which has a capacity to reduce the triglyceride to substantial extent. So that we have to keep in mind. But this patient already is on statin, which is a relatively high dose, about 20 milligrams, has also agreed. A patient is already on. Dyslipidemia, these are the fibrate studies, which clearly have shown that though they reduce the triglyceride to significant extent, cardiovascular outcome is not improved. And that is the reason we have to do something else. Now, what else can be done apart from the lifestyle management? Omega-3 fatty acid is an important option. We know that 1 gram of omega-3 fatty acid can reduce the triglyceride up to 10%. Not only it reduces the triglyceride, but also it reduces the oxidative stress, inflammation, thrombosis, and pressure, increase the insulin sensitivity. So overall, it can give a benefit as far as cardiovascular is concerned. As you can see here, when you add omega-3 fatty acid to the statin therapy, you can also reduce the non-HDL. LDL is by and large neutral, and HDL is slightly increased. So when we give this combination, it is overall beneficial. At the same time, especially when you give a high dose of omega-3 fatty acid, it can reduce the hsCRP to substantial extent, and which we all know is an important factor. The various drugs which are available, omega-3 fatty acid, it may be a combination of DHA or EPA, it may be a simple EPA. This is a drug formulation, this is available. They are tested in the clinical trial. At the same time, diet also we can modify, give omega-3 or fish oil, but we don't know how much omega-3 fatty acid as such is going on. And this is a study which has been done previously for secondary prevention, where 1 gram of omega-3 fatty acid was used. It was not found to be beneficial. The JELIS was the study which clearly, when the high dose of EPA was used and the triglyceride value was high, the MACE was significantly reduced. So that is an important thing. This is also an important study which clearly shows that intravascular ultrasound plaque reduction can be achieved if you add on, compared to the statin monotherapy EPA, which also reduces the triglyceride, so plaque regression also can be achieved. This is another study which also clearly tells that 42% reduction in the plaque also can be achieved, especially if the patient triglyceride is on the higher side. So that we have to keep in mind that something added can be done and it is going to be effective. Now, this is a clinical outcome study, which is a very important study, reduced study, which clearly our patient basically falls into this with 45-year diabetes, triglyceride is on the higher side, LDL is by and large under control, and high dose of EPA was given to this group of patients. Why the EPA was chosen? Because it has an anti-inflammatory capacity, which is much more than the combination. At the same time, when the DHA is there, it many a times causes rise in the LDL, so it is not used in the study. And what was the outcome? As far as primary outcome is concerned, fatal cardiovascular event, urgent need of revascularization, cardiovascular death was significantly reduced. You can see over here that the p-value is significant and significant advantage was there. And this is in relation to the LDL level, whatever was there, the benefit of this adding therapy was this in patient. At the same time, triglyceride level also was whatever there, the benefit was also seen. Safety aspect is that with slight increase in the serious bleeding, slight increase in atrial fibrillation, but otherwise it is good. There was a big controversy because the placebo arm which was used in study was a mineral oil, but it has been cleared by the FDA recently that it is not harming the patient, and as far as placebo is concerned, it is okay to have a placebo. Now, there are important studies which has been done for the primary prevention. Now, one of them is a study for diabetic patients without the evidence of cardiovascular was given this. This study was negative, but we have to keep in mind this was a primary prevention study, not the secondary prevention study, the case which we are having. Vital also is another study where vitamin D and this both are used. And here also it was a primary prevention study. The benefit, vitamin D, there was no benefit. As far as omega-3 fatty acid concerned, slight benefit was there in this group of patients. So SN and vitals are an important study. They are a negative study as far as omega-3 fatty acid. But friends, we have to keep in mind that this study is not for the secondary prevention. What we are having the case right now is of a secondary prevention. There is a big study which is going on right now, which is going to study more than 30,000 patients. It's the strength study. 4 grams of EPA has to be used. And this LDL, all the patients are on the statin therapy, and we really need to see the outcome of this. Till now, what we are interested in is a reduced study, which clearly tells that triglycerides is an important and better to CV risk marker. Triglycerides are a potential target for the therapy. And based on this therapy, it should not be viewed as a triglyceride-lowering therapy, but overall clinical benefit which has been achieved with these two. So definitely EPA is to be used, or what we can say, it can pick up the patient, triglyceride level can pick up the high-risk patient. And if you give the EPA, then overall cardiovascular event can be significantly reduced. And that is the reason the EPA has been recently approved for those patients who has established cardiovascular disease, our patient. At the same time, patient is having diabetes and additional risk factor, and triglyceride level is on the higher side. So 150 milligram, this is a very classic. So it is an indication, and FDA has recently approved this molecule to reduce the cardiovascular event in the 2019. So our patient, as I was to start with, is having the secondary prevention, coronary disease, diabetes, high risk patient. LDL is reasonably, of course, we need to control a little bit LDL more with either ezetimibe or PCSK9, but still the the triglyceride is high. Okay, so addition of statin is not going to affect the triglyceride level. And secondary prevention, high risk patient, dyslipidemia, this patient is having, and in spite of high dose of statin, patient is having triglyceride on the higher side. So it is a high residual risk, and high dose of EPA, that is 4 gram, or a high dose of omega-3 fatty acid is best choice to reduce the additional risk factor which the patient is having. This is molecule.
Sir, your time is over.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Now I would like to request Dr. VT Shah from Mumbai to start. Sir, if you are ready, sir. Your mic is mute. Sir, your audio system, your mic is mute, sir. Kindly unmute. Dr. VT Shah, sir.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
And can you see my slides?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Very good. Thank you very much. And thanks, Dr. Kamal Sharma, to give me this opportunity to speak on this topic based on this case. So let's go to this case first. 45-year-old male, known case of diabetes with family history. So all this has been known. Now, what is not mentioned in the case is the duration between NSTEMI PCI and the lipid reports. Was the patient already on R20, that is rosuvastatin 20, when he got this NSTEMI PCI, or was the R20 started after the PCI and then the lipid report is done after 4 to 6 weeks, for 6 to 12 weeks. Then I would say if it is 6 to 12 weeks, that the effect of R20 was already there, and despite that, the LDL is high. Now, assuming that the lipid report was 14 hours fasting, especially when you are quoting the triglycerides, and it is 6 to 12 weeks post R20, or was he already on R20 as I said earlier? What about tobacco abuse? What about alcohol abuse? Did he take alcohol before this TG was done? We don't know that. What about duration of diabetes and the current HbA1c level? Was it like 9, 10, 11, 12 or something? The TG would be high just because of uncontrolled diabetes. So please try to rule out. I agree with what the previous speakers have said, but application of the data in a particular patient is very important. Look at the BMI. BMI is not mentioned. So how do I know a patient is obese or a thin, frail patient? So why would you reduce the weight of a frail patient? Clinical examination of Arcus senilis xanthoma is not given. So I don't know whether this is familial hyperlipidemia or not. Besides the LED culprit lesion, were there non-culprit lesions? Do you have to attend them? Because if they're non-culprit lesions, all the more you have to be aggressive in attending them. What is the economic status of this patient? What is the reimbursement facilities, whether he is from central government or public institution where injections like Repatha are reimbursed? Is he a government institution worker? So all this has to be taken into account before you apply all your data and all the trials to this patient. Now we come back to a patient, 45-year-old, premature, yes, premature CVD, known diabetes, high risk factor, family history, another premature. So that also is a high risk. LPA 60 is a high risk. Baseline LDL-C on Rozua, assuming that he was already on and it is 138 now. So his estimated LDL-C without the 20 milligram rosuvastatin is 289, a factor of 2.1. You have to multiply on 20 milligram. HDL-C 32 milligram are low, but we don't have any drugs, so we are not going to discuss that. Triglycerides definitely significantly elevated, but we have to first rule out all the other causes of high TG and then decide about that. So naturally he falls into a very high risk group as per ESC and extremely high risk group as per Lipid Association of India. Is it a case of familial hyperlipidemia? Yes, he is a raised, because as I said, that raised LDL level about 190 present in this patient, family history present. So according to the Dutch lipid network criteria, he has 8 points and he fits into that. And as the previous speaker said, possibilities familial combined hyperlipidemia because of high TG if it is properly done in a setting. Importance of screening is very important in young ACS patients, definitely. Now, what is your LDL-C goal for this patient? According to ESC, it should be less than 55 milligram, and according to a lipid association, it should be less than 50, and less than 30 is optional. I think he is less than 30 because of all the high risk factors. Now, FDA approved indication, if you see here, ACS, recent MI, multivessel, polyvascular, recurrent MI, all these are indications where you use PCSK9 inhibitors because you want to get a target less than 55. Okay. Now he is also a familial hypercholesterolemia patient. So you require those levels, very aggressive levels in this patient. And most important is, patients may say or people might say that why reduce cholesterol just now? Why do you want to give such a costly injection? You may better give it after 3-4 years when the patent is off or you get cheaper substitute. But what will happen is the cumulative LDL, the plaque burden, atherosclerotic plaque burden will increase by that time. In an ACS patient, you want aggressive control within the first 30 days to avoid a repeat revascularization or a hospitalization, and within the 1 year to repeat MI. So what are the therapeutic? Patient is already on Rozua. Baseline is 138. By doubling the dose, what will you achieve? You will achieve additional 6%. So you will go to 129. You add ezetimibe, you will go to another 15% reduction and you will come to 114. Does this achieve? No. So what do? You have no option but to give him PCSK9 inhibitor. Look at this IMPROVE-IT trial. It just showed 15% additional reduction, and that also with simvastatin. Can we use PCSK9 in early ACS? You will say that the trials were not in ACS, but this Evopax trial of injection Repatha was in ACS, and we tried to achieve less than 70 milligram, that is 50 milligram. And as you see here, we achieved 30.5 in Evopax LDLC, and this is within the first 1 month. So percentage reduction is high within the first 1 month, but you don't have outcome data for this ACS population. The Evopax was an efficacy study, but Odyssey was a trial which showed efficacy in post-ACS patients. So this was another trial to show rapid and aggressive LDLC reduction within 4 to 7 days. So if you get 1 month reduction, forget 4 to 7 days is too early and a very good reduction. I would prefer that irrespective of LDL, please give a first shot of Repatha injection to this patient when they come with ACS with such high risk factors. So these are all the charts which show that this is Odyssey outcome in acute coronary syndrome, which showed efficacy and safety, reduction in MACE, reduction in MI, reduction in repeat hospitalization, and reduction most important in death. So this is a very high risk patient, most eligible for a PCSK9 inhibitor. Now there are studies which shows PCSK9 inhibitors can give you plaque stabilization by increasing the coronary fibrous plaque thickness, by reducing the lipid arc. So this is again an OCT study showing the same thing. And there, now this is most important slide which I was showing you. Moderate intensity statin reduction 30, you are high intensity 50, add ezetimibe 65, PCSK 90, and that is how I came to this figure that this fellow, if you want to come below 50.
Sir, your time is over.
Last slide. Now what will happen if we achieve this goal by adding PCSK9? We will come to, from 289 predicted, will come to 85% reduction, will be 43.47, definitely less than 50. So these are the class 1 indications for such kind of patients. What about triglyceride? He said, now triglycerides have to be done only after all the alcohol is ruled out, weight reduction is done, and finally, if it is not controlled, we should add the Vascepa or the EPA. So this was the study, but please remember the inclusion criteria of reduce IT, that this was done with LDL 41 to 100. Our patient has to first achieve this line of 41 and then he becomes eligible. So please give Repatha first, and then if the triglyceride don't come under control, then only he is eligible for reduce IT trial and not otherwise.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very nice.
Elevated LPA level also a risk factor which Repatha takes care of it. It reduces by 25%. These are all the studies regarding that. I will not. And about diabetes, see, small LDL-C is also a factor. And I'll show you a trial, the precise IVUS trial, where ezetimibe did not. Ezetimibe did not, no significant LDL-C lowering in diabetic patient with statin plus ezetimibe. And the plaque volume was not reduced. So these are all the studies. Therefore, I would say PCSK9 inhibitor along with 40 of our E10 and then give PCSK9 inhibitor. After that, if the TG is still high, then you start Vascepa. But please remember, Vascepa is not available in our country, and if you import it, then it will be another 1,600 rupees per day. Vascepa not available, imported 45,000 rupees per month if you convert dollars into rupees. Very expensive measure. Instead, start PCSK9, 30,000 per month for 3 years. Don't deprive of the early benefits. Reimburse patients from CGHS and other organizations. Newer molecules will come. Don't tell the patient 30,000 abhi lifelong tumko kharcha karna padega. Tell him that, okay, newer molecules and off patent will come in 2-3 years time, like inclisiran and so on, and you will have a bright future. So that's my take. Thank you very much for giving me those extra moments. And I think we can have.
I would like to request Dr. Sanjeev Bhatia to elicit the discussion. Only for 2 minutes, sir. Huh? Please.
Thank you very much, sir. Beautiful presentation by all the eminent speakers. I myself got confused what to start with this patient. I think all the 3 drugs should be given to this patient, which has been given in this case. My only question with Professor V.T. Shah is, sir, have you used Repatha and how frequently are you using it? What side effects are you facing with this drug, sir?
I think more than 50 patients of mine are on Repatha right now. I use it. Even if the patient cannot afford, I explain to them there is a drug available for which you have an indication as per current norms. Whether you afford or not is a different story. Think over it. maybe they come next time and say, oh, this is how it can be reimbursed and I'm ready to take. 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 may happen. But then, and there are other charitable organizations for familial hyperlipidemia, which people are ready to support. So definitely I've used it. I have patients on them, no side effect except for taking injections. And I'll tell you, out of this, 20 to 25% of my patients are all doctors.
I have one question.
They get convinced very easily, and then they make up for saying, okay, we will afford this because, and more of them are like post CABG, second or third plasties. What will they do? You want a repeat revascularization? It's not possible for them.
I have one question to all faculties and the panelists. Being a consulting physicians, in spite of the maximum dose of the statin, adding ezetimibe and all lifestyle modification and weight reduction measure, still triglyceride persistent high is the issue. So in that situation, what will be your opinion to consider adding a metformin, particularly in moderate to high obese patient, or using SGLT2 in particular this situation? Urmil or Vitisha or Dr. Rajiv Agrawal can focus on this.
Metformin choice, yes, acceptable. SGLT2 does not reduce significant any TG levels. So not for that. But yes, if SGLT2 is reducing the weight and thereby indirectly reducing the TG levels, I will accept that. And this patient, SGLT2, more important, the GLP-1 receptor agonist is an indication for this patient.
So, fantastic talk, Dr. Vitisha, fantastic talk, Dr. Rajiv Agrawal and Dr. Urmil. My point of deliberately quoting Dr. Urmil's talk was Omega has vital ascending data to reduce it was to include the 3 important trials that have emerged in 2020. All the 3 trials, the Ascend, Vital and Reduce. They have actually brought on omega-3 into the game, which was actually otherwise a two-way debate. Now, assuming that if there are no secondary causes of hyper-TG, Dr. Vitisha and Dr. Agrawal, do you think we have a place for omega-3 after these 2 trials? Dr. Urmil has already spoken on this, so I would like Dr. Rajiv Agrawal and Dr.
There are no outcome data on this. Long time back on
Sir, reduce data are showing the outcome data. It is
I agree.
Data, and that is the reason why US FDA has approved this molecule.
Please don't confuse
this molecule on the basis of the outcome data, not on anything else.
Dr. Urmil Shah,
we are talking of this molecule, not before that.
You are not ready to listen. I think you please listen to me. There is a difference between omega-3 fatty acid and there is a difference between EPA, which was used in Reduce IT. Don't confuse. All the people, Americans and all the Westerners are saying they are not replaceable. Omega-3 fatty acid is not replaceable with EPA. EPA is EPA. It's a purified form of omega-3. Omega-3 is available, but all this Ascend and Vital trial was with omega-3, which did not show outcome data. So don't.
Sir, please listen, sir. Sir, please listen once for a time. Please listen. Both the Ascend and Vital were the primary prevention. Okay. The case which we are discussing is not primary prevention. That is the reason the debate is there. If it is a primary prevention, you are absolutely right. And what I am talking is not omega-3, I am talking of EPA only. EPA is a part of omega-3 acid. It is a selected the thing which has been out of the omega. So the discussion point is, I am not telling that omega-3, but EPA should be used.
Correct. I have said that in my lecture.
Do you agree or not for EPA?
EPA, I fully agree. I told you.
Yes, that is what I wanted to. I wanted to send the message to all the listeners. That EPA is a good thing, or EPA should be used. We have to keep this thing in mind, and that is the reason probably Kamal Sharma has kept this talk. Okay, because of the study of EPA, not of omega-3. Okay,
sir.
I think let's pull it up. I think both the points are very well taken. We understand the role, and the whole idea is that yes, mortality reduction. When you talk, there is no debate. If you have a young vasculopath, very high CV risk, PCSK9 has wonderful data. But all the guys do talk about ezetimibe ahead of PCSK9 and the role of omega-3 is not gone. It's still
Yes.
coming back, and it's coming in a big way. I think if we were doing this debate in 2020 or 2019, Dr. Urmil might not have been speaking at
Yeah.
all. He's got a chance to speak, but that does not mean that PCSK9 is thrown back by it. PCSK holds an edge in terms of outcomes, as we know very strongly in a patient who's got polyvasculopath, multivessel disease, young CAD. I think nothing supersedes PCSK9, but that comes only after ezetimibe has been used, as Dr. Agarwal already mentioned.
Kamal,
I think, Chair, if there are more
one
points
question.
to